Let's return now to our story of Pope Francis, who is visiting Belgium, taking a message of peace and reconciliation, of course. He'll be talking about the migrant issue, he'll be talking about the war in Ukraine, but also he'll be meeting with victims of those people who are abused by Catholic priests. Some of this, of course, is very historical, but nonetheless, people have survived and still had to live with years of torment over what happened to them at the hands of people who really they should have been able to trust. Let's bring in Mark Artsruni, who is from the SNAP organisation, that's Survival Network for Those Abused by Priests. Mark is the European coordinator of the group. Mark, thanks for being with us. The scale of abuse within the Catholic Church continues to shock people, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for having me. And I have to say that our first thoughts must really go to victims of clergy sex abuse around the world who have suffered through a very traumatic experience that is often underplayed by the church. And there's been some rather ghastly cases in Belgium in the last 10 or 20 years. We can go into more detail if you want to.
Please do, because I'll get my cards on the table. I was brought up in a Catholic family, christened as a Catholic. I'm not here to make any excuses or say, well, all I'm saying is that it never fails to shock me how this happens, how it went ignored, how it was brushed over, glossed over. And it's the opposite to my own experience of Catholic priests. But nonetheless, it makes it all the more shocking for me to hear about this. I can't begin to imagine how the victims feel.
Well, you're absolutely right. And you're right to also point out not every single child is going to be abused by a priest in the Catholic school, that's for sure. But the scale of the problem is still pretty horrendous worldwide. And since we're talking about Belgium, let me tell you about the biggest scandal in the last 10, 15 years is with one Bishop Roger van Gilhoeven, who was defrocked earlier this year, after admitting 14 years ago that for years he sexually abused a nephew, starting when the nephew was 5 years old. He was given a free pass for 15 years, and only now he was defrocked, probably in the run-up to the visit of the Pope.
As you're giving us these details, I need to point out to people that the person we're seeing there is, of course, Pope Francis. There's no allegation or doubt about him. And, of course, you are detailing things for us that have been historical. I'm just clarifying things for people watching who may be a little bit confused by our use of images. That's why I'm interrupting, just to say that.
Okay, that's fine.
I mean, this visit by Pope Francis, he's going to sit down and what can he say to the victims? How can you begin to ease the pain they are feeling?
Well, that's a good point, and I think what the Pope should do is take the victims seriously, with serious meetings with these victims. And in the present case, I have it on good authority that often in these cases where the Pope meets survivors, the survivors are carefully screened. I understand this is what's going to happen in Belgium, where the meeting on Friday night will take place in a secret location, and what is often the case, probably with minimal media coverage. And that's a shame. And unfortunately, it reflects pretty badly on the Catholic Church when they have these meetings, as I say, partly in secret, which, as a result of which, one can fear that these meetings are for show and do the Church no good. It just continues the crisis and the lack of transparency and lack of trust in the institution.